So today, you see, we'll start with the banking system in our country. What is the banking system we are following? After we complete this chapter, again we'll go back to the depreciation chapter. Okay. So first of all of you, as you are seeing from the screen, that which is the head of all the banks in our country, which regulates all the banks in our country, whatever norms they are following, all are given by the Reserve Bank of India. Okay. Other banks are also falling under the rules and regulations of RBI. Okay. So you see, after just below RBI, you see there are two main subsections. One is scheduled banks and another one is unscheduled banks. Okay. So you will see that all types of banks we are seeing all are falling under scheduled banks only. Then what are unscheduled banks? Or what is the difference between scheduled banks and unscheduled banks? Okay, so unscheduled banks are those banks which are very small in nature, and it is not possible for them to follow the rules and regulations which are time to time which are given by the Reserve Bank. Maybe that one unscheduled bank is looking after only 2 or 3 villages, but they are banks. But they are unable to follow the guidelines of the Reserve Bank because the Reserve Bank mostly makes guidelines for the bigger banks. So which is not feasible for these banks to follow. So you will see that most of the Gramina banks are falling under this category. Okay, then scheduled banks are those banks which are large banks and which can follow the rules and regulations set by the RBI. So on that basis, the banks broadly has been classified into scheduled and unscheduled banks. Okay. So further you will see that scheduled banks are divided into two types. One is commercial banks, another one is cooperative banks. Okay. So mostly we are concentrating mostly on the commercial banks. Okay. Then we will see the cooperative banks. So the scheduled and unscheduled banks, is it clear all of you? Have you got the difference?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can anybody just tell me what is the main difference between scheduled and unscheduled?
The schedule is large, but unscheduled is smaller.
Smaller banks may be looking after 1 or 2 villages. Very small, so they cannot follow the guidelines and rules given by the RBI. So intentionally, it has been kept outside the control of RBI. So scheduled means what? Schedule means RBI is having a schedule in which it is having the name of all the banks, and in that list, these unscheduled banks are not there. Okay. So, but their number is very less. Unscheduled banks number is very less. Throughout the country, if you see, mostly you will find around 10 to 15 banks of that sort. Mostly Gramina banks. Have you heard about any Gramina bank? Can you name some Gramina bank?
APGVB, sir.
Yes, AP?
Sir, Utkal Gramina Bank.
Utkal Gramina Bank. Yes, that is an unscheduled bank. Okay. Then another one, somebody said AP something.
APGVB, sir.
APGVP, but what is the full form? Andhra Pradesh Gramina Bank,
Gramina Vikas Bank, sir.
Gramina Vikas Bank, yes. So all these banks are falling into the unscheduled category. Okay. Right. Then we'll see. Yes.
Sir, can RBI take any action on these unscheduled banks if it necessary?
No. Totally they are kept outside the control of RBI. They will may have their own rules. They will make it and they will do, because there is very small banks, no? So it is mostly made by the local people, and they will manage by their own. So RBI will not interfere in their working. Okay. Now we come to scheduled banks, again divided into two parts: commercial banks and cooperative banks. So commercial banks again subdivided into 4 types of banks. That is public sector banks, private sector banks, foreign sector banks, and regional rural banks. Now you see public sector bank here. What does public means here? Which type of banks? SBI, this type of which sector, which type of banks they are? So here public means what? Either they are getting some help from the government or they are totally run with the help of the government. Okay. So the biggest example of public sector bank is the State Bank of India. All of you know it. That whatever government programs, plans, everything is implemented mostly through State Bank. So mostly public sector banks are those banks which are heavy running with the government funding. Okay. So again you will see in that SBI and associate banks, but they are now merged. Then other nationalized banks. So other nationalized banks are also there, which are basically government banks, but little bit less in importance than the State Bank. Okay. Then there are other public sector banks which are little bit smaller in nature, but they are running with the help of the government only. Okay. Then private sector banks. Private sector banks, what are private sector banks? So private sector banks are the banks which are funded by the private individuals. So they are not getting any funding help from the government. But they are coming under the control of RBI. Means if whatever rules and regulations RBI will set for loans or something or rules, even if they are not getting any funding from RBI, they have to follow the rules. Okay. Then foreign sector banks. Foreign sector banks means what? That bank which is there in India, the head office is somewhere outside the country, our country, but branch office is there in India. Then that type of banks will be known as foreign sector banks. Okay. The next one is the regional rural bank. In regional rural bank, what will happen? These are mostly villages, located in villages. And these are the channel of the central government for transferring money to the villages directly. So what is the importance of RRB or regional rural bank? Means if government want to give some money to the people directly, without involving the public sector bank or any other bank, they can transfer the money directly to the RRB of that village, and villagers will directly get the money straight from the central government. Okay. So now are you clear about all these type of banks? Just now I explained. Or anybody has any doubt in this? You can ask now. All are clear, huh? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Clear, huh? Okay. Okay, then somebody tell me, what is the difference between private sector bank and foreign sector bank? Anyone? Just now only explained.
Sir, foreign sector bank means its head office in somewhere not in our country, sir. But private sector bank's head office is in India.
But from where the funding is coming? Money is coming from which for
Private individuals, sir. Not from
okay. And in foreign sector?
In foreign sector also, sir, private individuals.
Yeah, but private individuals, those who are staying in foreign countries, they will send the money for running the bank. But in private sector bank, what will happen? The promoters or those are individuals who are owning the bank, they are present in India only, and they are only providing the money. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think all of you are clear now about all these type of banks. Okay. So we'll go forward. Just we'll move to the next slide. Okay, so as I said earlier that we will concentrate more on the commercial banks. So we have seen that there are different types of commercial banks. So as you can see, the commercial banks may be defined as any bank or organization that deals with deposits and that deals with the deposits and the deposits and loans of business organizations. So mostly you see that these commercial banks are mainly they are targeting to the business organizations, not to the individual customers. Okay. So basically commercial banks are existing so that they can take this deposit and they can give loans to the business organizations. Okay. Then we will move to the next slide. Yeah, commercial banks issue bank checks and drafts as well as accept money on term deposits. So in commercial banks there is a facility to issue checks, as all of you know, or bank draft, as well as accept money on the deposit. Term deposits means like fixed deposits. Okay, which you make for a fixed number of years. Okay, next. Commercial banks also act as money lenders by way of installment loans and overdrafts. Now here you will see that commercial banks act as money lenders means what? They will also facilitate, like you take the loan and you pay in installments. Okay. Then there is overdraft. So what is overdraft? Overdraft means what? The overdraft facility is given to some customers, old customers of bank, those who are having a good track record. In that, what will happen in overdraft facility, if a member is having, then even if his balance is in the bank, he does not have any balance, but he has issued a check for some amount. Then normally what should happen? Suppose the customer is not having any amount in his bank account, but he has issued a check. Let us say he has issued a check of 1 lakh, but balance in his account is 0. So normally what should happen? Anybody can tell?
Check depends.
Check will. So it is called as bouncing, right? The check will bounce. But if you are having an overdraft facility, it will not happen because the bank will pay that money to whom you have given the check. The bank will pay the money, and afterwards the bank will collect it from the customer along with some interest. Okay. So overdraft facility are not given to all persons. Only persons, trusted customers of the bank will get that facility. Okay, is it clear now what is overdraft? Okay. Then we'll see commercial banks also allow for a variety of deposit accounts such as checking account, savings account, and time deposit. So checking account or the current account, it is for the businesses. Daily they can draw and deposit money. Savings is for individuals like us. We can also deposit and withdraw anytime. But time deposit means fixed deposit. We are giving the money for a certain period of time, maybe 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. Then these institutions are run to make a profit, owned by a group of individuals. So always remember that commercial banks are existing because their main motive is to make a profit. Okay. Right. Then next. We'll go to the next slide now. Yeah, now we'll come to the another type of commercial bank, that is the regional rural banks. So already I told you about regional rural banks, that the main objective is to ensure sufficient institutional credit for agriculture and other rural sectors. Like I told you that these are existing in villages, and if the villagers want money for some purpose, then institutions like big institutions like RBI and some other big banks, they can transfer money directly to the accounts of the villagers through RRBs. Okay. Okay, next. So the area of operation of RRB is limited to the area which will be notified by the government. Okay, it may be 1 or 2 districts, 1 or more districts. So on your last sentence, all of you see carefully that how the money will be coming for making the RRB. Suppose a new RRB is to be constructed, then who will pay how much money? So you see there, RRB jointly owned by Government of India. Okay. The concerned state government and the sponsor bank. So who will give how much money for making the RRB? 50% of the money will be given by the government of India, means the central government. 15% of the money will be given by the state government in which it is that RRB is going to be made. And 35% will be given by the sponsor banks of that area. So sponsor banks means the main bank in that area. Suppose, for example, one RRB will be constructed near our college. Saurabh. Okay, so for RRB, making RRB, 35% of the money will be issued by the sponsor bank or the main bank in that area. So I was sharing that if some bank will be constructed near our college, then in that surrounding which is the main bank, that bank will give the money. So mostly you will see that either it is Andhra Bank or it is the Punjab National Bank. Okay. Then Prathama Bank is the first RRB in India located in the city of Moradabad in UP. So all of you remember, first RRB of the country is the name is Prathama Bank. All of you know Prathama means first. Okay. Right. Then next. Okay. Now we will see that this is one type of table like types of commercial bank. Here you see first column is type of commercial bank. Four types it is written here, which we have seen in the diagram, first diagram. Now you are required to write in the next column major shareholders, means